Hello, hello, my holy sisters and brothers. It's great to be with you. That was Rabbi Eitan Katz singing his Nigun Chazak, the Nigun of strength. How are you holding up? It's a Thursday night. Thank God we're less than 24 hours away from Shabbos. We're all so excited. Before I even welcome anybody, I want to tell you a quick story. I guess it was last week, toward the end of last week, so it's been about a week. I got a call from a guy named Chaim in this neighborhood who knows that, I have a background in film production and speaking to an audience, etc. And he has an initiative that he wants to get off the ground, and he just wanted to get some advice. And he calls it BLAM, B-L-A-M, which stands for bench like a mensch. And he explained to me that there's, that people don't take benching seriously enough, right? So what is benching? So that is the mitzvah, the commandment. Jews are obligated after they've had a meal to say the grace after meals. And we've actually studied that, right? When we in Tractate Brachos, and it came up again in Shabbos, right? So after we eat a meal, and what is a meal? A meal includes bread, right? So if you have a meal that includes bread, then you're obligated to wash, to say the motzi, the blessing over the bread before the meal. Then you eat the meal, enjoy it. The bread blessing covers all the other foods in it. And then afterwards, you say the birkas hamazon, the blessing after the meal. And a lot of people take it for granted. Most people in some way or another kind of take it for granted. Even if they do the benching, they kind of rush through it. And Chaim was saying, people who are punctilious and meticulous about praying 3 times a day, it's very nice and they're obviously obligated and they should do that. But, saying the Shmona Esrei, the Amida, the standing prayer that we say 3 times a day, that's actually a requirement, an obligation that was created by the rabbis. The praying 3 times a day, it was instituted by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but more as a tradition. And then after the temple was destroyed, the rabbis instituted that it would replace the daily offerings that were brought in the temple. But saying grace after the meal, blessing God and thanking God for our many blessings, including the fact that we just got to eat a meal and now feel satisfied, that's in the Torah, right? That's actually part of the Shema blessing, right? And you will eat and be satisfied and thank the Lord your God. It's in that middle paragraph. So you got to take benching seriously. And to illustrate the point, Chaim shared with me this story that he had read in a pamphlet and kind of changed his life. And it concerns Rabbi Meir Shapiro, who is the rabbi who in the early part of the 20th century, 1923, I believe, at Rosh Hashanah that year, created Daf Yomi, right? So this program that you and I are enjoying together, reading a page of Talmud every day on a 7.5-year cycle to complete the whole Talmud. So that idea was created by Rabbi Meir Shapiro, whose dream was that a person could be studying anywhere in the world. He could travel, he could get to a new city, find the Jewish community there, and they would be studying the same page of the Talmud that he would be studying that day, and he could join a study group anywhere he is. So Meir Shapiro was a teacher, and he was a teacher in a cheder, right? I don't know if he was a daily teacher in a cheder. He was definitely a teacher in a yeshiva, but he would also go and teach classes to the younger children in the cheder. And when he did, it was his practice to sort of quiz them on what they had learned and then give them candy. There's a lot of candy in Orthodox Jewish schools so that the learning should be sweet for the children. So that day, he didn't have any candy on him. And there was a boy named Shimon who, got every question right after they had the learning session together. And then Rabbi Shapiro asked a bunch of questions, and this boy Shimon got all the questions right. So Rabbi Shapiro said to Shimon, I don't have any candy with which to reward you. I wish I did, but I'm going to give you something more precious, much more precious than whatever candy I could give you today. I'm going to give you a segula. A segula is a treasure in the form of a custom. There's a lot of segulas, but like for instance, when you promise to make a donation to a synagogue in return for getting an honor of having an aliyah, certain aliyahs on certain Shabbosim during the year, on certain Shabbosis during the year, have a segula for parnasa or for good health or for Yeshuas, for salvations from problems. A segula it's sort of a custom where there's some big rabbi or rebbe said that there's going to be a reward in your life if you're meticulous about whatever this particular ritual or custom is. So Rabbi Shapiro told this boy Shimon, so there's a segula on being meticulous with Birkas Hamazon, being meticulous with saying the grace after meals, making sure that you take the time to thank God properly, and particularly not to just say it in your mind and by heart, but bench like a mensch, say it with a sitter, right? Say it with a prayer book so you have the text in your hands. And the Birkas Hamazon is in every sitter. Every standard Jewish prayer book has the grace after meals. And a lot of people create benchers for bar mitzvahs and weddings, which has the Birkas Hamazon written in it so that it's handy. I'm actually not sure, because when Chaim called me, he said, bench like a mensch means you bench from a sitter. And I'm not sure if a bencher counts as a sitter or not. I actually just sent him that question and haven't heard back yet. But at any rate, so Rabbi Shapiro said to Shimon, and if you're meticulous with Birkas Hamazon, it will always look after it, it will look after you. And you will never have to suffer. Your life will be saved. And you'll have a parnasa bekavod. You will have an honorable livelihood. You will never have to, in order to make a living and feed your family, have a job that is too miserable or too difficult or too degrading, or no job or no source of money. You and your family. I'm not saying you're going to be wealthy, but you'll always be taken care of. And so, this young Shimon, he said, okay, I'm in. And he started benching like a mensch. And this was a big deal. You can imagine for a child, 8, 9, 10 years old, when all the other kids, it was an Orthodox Jewish school, so the kids would bench, but they would bench like by memory, just say a few words, kind of mumble it after lunch at school, and then go run off and play in the playground. And there was Shimon, who took it seriously, would linger over the table, some extra minutes in order to say the grace properly. So that was in the 1930s. He's a little bit older. I think he was maybe 13 or 14 when the Holocaust is happening around him. This was in Poland. And he was a diminutive kid. He was short. And so he found himself, in one of those selecțias. I think that was the word for it. In other words, one of those selections that the Nazis did. The people to the left go to the gas chamber. The people to the right, you can do some slave labor. Miserable, but it'll save your life. And he was so small and frail and skinny, he was really afraid. He was like other people who were small like him were, deemed not big or strong enough for slave labor, and they were just all going, to the wrong line. But he prayed and he said, God, I've been saying that Birkas Hamazon, and Rabbi Shapiro said it would save me. And so I ask you today, in the merit of all these prayers I've made after my meals, save me. And as he was getting closer to the front of the line, he didn't know what was going to happen. All of a sudden, there's a tap on his shoulder, and the person in the line behind him says, tell him you're a cook and I'm your assistant. I said, all right. So he gets to the front of the line. There's a Nazi there, and he says, I'm a cook, and this is my assistant. This is a little 13-year-old boy. And the Nazi, I guess, wasn't paying such close attention. He says, go there. And he went to the kitchen, and he got a job as a cook and brought the person behind him as his assistant. Unbelievable. So he learned how to cook and was cooking and survived. And a few months later, there was a Nazi supervising the kitchen. It was like, who is this 13-year-old kid who's a cook? And he started to sort of pick on the kid. And at some point, he said to the kid, go outside and dig a trench, and I want it 2 meters long. And so the Nazis, this was late in the war, and they were already engaged with the Russians, and they were afraid of attacks on the ground, and they were digging these trenches for protection. And so this, Nazi in the kitchen wanted to have his own personal trench outside. And he told this 13-year-old boy, dig a trench. It was stony, frozen ground. And he had like a small, weak shovel. And he said, and I don't see that in 2 hours, you're dead. Kid goes out there. He's praying to God. He says, in the merit of the Birkas Hamazon that I say every day, please, God, save me. What happens? He's out there trying to make a hole. He's hardly getting anywhere in this frozen ground. Some Nazis come by in a Jeep and they're laughing at the little Jew trying to dig a hole in the frozen ground. And they actually start throwing fruits and vegetables, kind of like old vegetables at him. And so he's getting pelted with these vegetables. And he says inside, so they can't hear him, he says, well, thank you, God. I see that the Birkas Hamazon has taken care of abundance. I've got abundance, but please now save me. So the Nazis roll by, and a few minutes later, another truck comes by with a bunch of Russian POWs, right? Russian POWs. What have they been doing all day? Digging trenches up at the front lines for the Nazis. They're hungry. They see all these vegetables. They're old, they're wilted, they're on the ground, but these guys are starving. They say to the kid, we want those vegetables. He says, and you can have those vegetables if you dig a 2-meter trench. They're like, oh, whatever. So they get out, they have the shovels, they dig this trench. And that doesn't take them 2 hours, it takes them 20 minutes. And then the kid gives them the vegetables. The Nazi from the kitchen comes outside, sees that the kid already has this trench dug. As far as he's concerned, it's like a miracle. He says, I know that God takes care of you people one way or another. I didn't realize how much. That was the exact quote of the kitchen Nazi. Well, Shimon survived the war. He ended up emigrating to what was then Palestine, became Israel, lived in Jerusalem all his life. Was never fabulously wealthy, but never really had to worry, had 10 kids, married them off, made beautiful weddings that he was able to afford, making an honorable livelihood, which he always credited to being meticulous with Birkas Hamazon. My friends, we're starting to take that more seriously. Bench like a mensch. If you're going to have a really nice meal, don't avoid having bread just so that you won't bench. In fact, go out of your way to have a little bread if you're going to have a really nice meal and the only thing is missing is the bread so that you could make the motzi before and bench afterward. That's what I've been trying to do. And I got to say, I feel a little bit uplifted, a little bit closer to the Lord because I've been doing this. So I recommend bench like a mensch and do it from a sitter. I'm still not sure if a bencher counts as a sitter, but I gotta say, having an actual prayer book on the table and saying the grace from the prayer book after eating a meal, there's something about it. It's like the proper way to give thanks to God for the food that we have just eaten. All right, just wanted to share that with you. Who is with us today on a fine Thursday night? Yehuda in South Carolina, Pauline in Arkansas, Melissa in New Jersey. No, in Great Neck, sorry. Stephen in New Hampshire, Bill back in Berkeley, James in Indy, Renee in Indy, Michael in Scranton, Nancy in North Carolina, John in Sedona, Alan in Wappingers Falls, New York, Ann in Merced, Paula in the house, Jennifer in Florida, Mike in Sarasota. Paula praying for all those in the cold. Amen. May the cold ease. May the energy be provided so that you can all have power in your homes. And we say amen. Morton in New Brunswick, Rochelle moving into Shabbos, Donna in Bahama, North Carolina, always great to see you, Donna, Lucy in Minnesota, Paul in Chicago, Tevi in Orlando, Jason in Cincinnati, Melanie in Alberta, Michelle in Baltimore, PK in Colorado. John says, light up the darkness, Sal. Thank you, John. Anna in Alhambra. Ella says hello. David says me too. And Renee says amen. Welcome, everybody. It's great that you're here. Marjorie in Georgia. And GGB says shalom. Okay. Lots to do today. Where are we holding? This is Daf Pei Tes, page 89 here in Tractate Pesachim, the fourth volume of the Talmud, the laws of Passover. We are in chapter 8. We're discussing how we constitute the group of people who are registered, and they must be pre-registered on a particular Korban Pesach, a particular Paschal lamb, the Passover offering, which of course can only be brought when the temple is standing in Jerusalem. It hasn't in 2,000 years, but we pray that the Messiah will come, Mashiach will come, the third temple will be rebuilt, and we'll be able to not just study these laws, but enact them. Okay, so here on page 89, the first half of the page has to do with sort of solving a dilemma. What happens if 5 people bring an offering to be slaughtered? They're the representatives of 5 different groups. One thing that's interesting about that is note that the whole lamb or the whole goat, young goat, is going to be roasted. It has to be roasted whole. But first, it is skinned, right? So you don't actually cook it in its skin. The hide is taken off, and the hide is something that the people can keep. When they take the hide off in this dilemma that the sages pose, one of the hides is found to have a wart, which would have disqualified that lamb, but they don't know whose it is. So somebody brought a lamb which was disqualified, and it doesn't, they can't fulfill their obligation with it. But they don't know which of the 5 groups was the disqualified lamb. In that situation, none of the lambs may be eaten because one of them is a disqualified lamb, and it would be an avera, transgression, to eat of a disqualified lamb for the Pesach obligation. However, all of them are exempt, even though they didn't eat a piece. All of them would be exempt from returning for Pesach Sheni, the second Passover. They have all fulfilled their obligation, and then the sages just, go and analyze why. That's an unexpected outcome. You'd think that since nobody actually ate of it, it was slaughtered properly and the blood was sprinkled on the altar, but why, if they didn't eat and it's an obligation to eat at least an olive-sized portion of the Paschal lamb, how come they're all exempt from returning for the second Passover a month later and doing it properly? And if you're curious about that, you can read in the first half. We're going to skip that because our page, very unusual, has 3 Mishnas, which we are going to begin and end their discussion today. All right, let's get to that. Am I right? Are we going to finish Mishnah number 5? No, we're going to open our discussion of Mishnah number 5, but we're going to open and complete Mishnahs 3 and 4 here of chapter 8. So let's go. In the case, Mishnah number 3 here in chapter 8, in the case of one who says to his children, I am slaughtering the Paschal lamb on behalf of whomever of you goes up first to Jerusalem. In other words, it's like a race, and whoever gets there first, as soon as the first of the children has entered his head and the majority of his body into Jerusalem, right? As soon as one of you crosses the finish line by entering the gates of Jerusalem, then that one has acquired his portion and acquires on behalf of his brothers. Is something going on? Oh, thank you, Janice Beanstalk. I didn't light the candle. Let's light up the darkness. I love that people are paying attention. Thank you, Janice. Okay, where am I? So as soon as he stipulates that as soon as the first of his children reaches Jerusalem and gets through the gate, then that one, the one who wins the race, has acquired his portion in the Paschal lamb and acquires on behalf of his brothers their portions together with him. So at first you're like, wait a minute. Are you saying that a father would say to the children, okay, whoever, wins a foot race to get to Jerusalem first, he's going to get his portion of the Paschal lamb, but and he's also going to get the portions of the other children? No, it can't be. And in fact, that's not what it says. Really, what he says is meaningless. What he's saying is whoever gets up here first is going to acquire their portion first and is going to acquire on behalf of the brothers and sisters their portions for them. So the statement doesn't really change anything. He's still the father slaughtering on behalf of his children. But it's a way of motivating them to be zealous to fulfill a mitzvah. In other words, and we have the teaching elsewhere, right? When you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, run, don't walk. Right? And that's what he's teaching them. Run, don't walk. And whoever gets up here first, it's like you're the first to acquire your portion in the lamb, and you acquired the portions for your brothers and sisters, because at that point, everyone is in. But as we'll see, he didn't really change anything. It's just a way to motivate the kids. The Gemara suggests you can learn from this case in the Mishnah that there is retroactive clarification. Retroactive clarification means, well, which portion did this kid acquire? Well, whichever portion he ends up with is the specific portion that he acquired when he won the race. We don't say, okay, and now this part of the lamb, which when we're roasted is going to be yours. No, it's that whatever one he ends up with, that portion was going to retroactively be the one that he acquired when the father said he has acquired the first portion. However, this concept of retroactive clarification is one that the sages never came to agree on. Some say it works, some say it doesn't. So whenever something is proven by retroactive clarification, the sages will seek another way to prove it. Rabbi Yochanan said, the Mishnah is not based on retroactive clarification. Rather, the father included all his children in his Paschal lamb from the outset. He created this competition only in order to enthuse them so that they would be expeditious in their fulfillment of mitzvahs, but in fact, his statement had no halachic ramifications. According to the explanation of Rabbi Yochanan, the language of the Mishnah is also precise, as it teaches, and he acquires, on behalf of his brothers, their portions together with him. Granted, if you say that the father registered them all from the beginning, before slaughtering the Paschal lamb, the case is well understood. But if you say that he did not register from the beginning, now what we're talking about here is, when do people become registered in a lamb? What do they have to do? What is the formula for them to say, okay, I'm in this group? Right? Because we said that a lamb can only be eaten by the group of people who registered to eat that lamb, when we're talking about the Passover lamb or the Passover kid. So when do we know that a group has actually registered? Who are the individuals in that group? How has the group demonstrated their intent to register? Here you have a father doing it on behalf of the children. So Rabbi Yochanan is saying, so he always intended to register these children in his lamb. And then the whole thing makes sense. But if in fact he didn't include anyone in the group until the first one came through the gate, if that's what he did, if you say that he did not register them from the beginning, but only after he slaughtered the lamb, can they be registered? Didn't we learn in a Mishnah? People can be registered and withdraw themselves from being registered on a Paschal lamb only until it is slaughtered, but not after. Clearly, then, the children must have already been registered from the outset, and we may learn from this precise reading of the Mishnah that Rabbi Yochanan's explanation is correct. That the competition was meant only to enthuse his children to be expeditious in their fulfillment of mitzvahs was also implied by that which was taught in the conclusion of a baraisa that also records this competition. There was an incident such as this, and the daughters preceded the sons. And it turned out that the daughters demonstrated that they were enthusiastic, whereas the sons demonstrated that they were lazy. So it's recorded there in the Talmud for all time. The women are often more zealous to fulfill mitzvahs than the men. I also realized I forgot something else to say at the outset. I'm wearing this shirt. We are having a sale at the AT store. So shirts like this Baruch Hashem shirt, or I don't roll on Shabbos, this is the day. Shammai said, greet every person with a smile, etc. The Hamza pillow, that's new. It's pretty awesome. The wisdom pillow, towels, blankets, mugs, awesome stuff. And it's all on sale just through this weekend from today until Monday with use promo code AWESOME. 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 So Nina will put the link to our store. It's always very easy, shop.accidentaltalmudist.org. But we have really cool merchandise there. It's on sale through this weekend with promo code AWESOME. And these make fantastic gifts. All right, I didn't want to forget that again. Okay, Mishnah number 4. Additional people can always be registered for a Paschal lamb as long as there will be at least an olive bulk of the lamb's meat for each and every person registered. People can be registered and withdraw themselves from being registered for a Paschal lamb until it is slaughtered. Rabbi Shimon says even until the priest sprinkles the blood. So the key concepts in this Mishnah number 4 here in chapter 8 is that you can keep adding people to be registered on a lamb so long as every individual is going to get at least an olive-sized bit of the meat of the lamb or of the kid. And you can keep adding people up until the moment when the lamb is slaughtered. After it's slaughtered, it's too late. You can't add any more people. Rabbi Shimon says until the slaughter procedure is complete, by which he means that the lamb is slaughtered, a priest is there to receive some of the life blood, it's walked over to the altar, and some of the blood is poured on the altar. And at that point, you can no longer add any more people to be registered in that group. Gemara. What is the first clause of the Mishnah teaching us? It is obvious that additional people can be registered. This comes to teach us that although this group was registered for it, the entire group can withdraw and a different group can register for it, despite the fact that no one from the original group remains, right? So maybe you have a situation where, it's a pilgrimage, right? So all these thousands and thousands or hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people are flowing up to Jerusalem for Passover. On the afternoon before Passover starts, they're all there. Hundreds and hundreds, thousands of these lambs are being slaughtered in the courtyard. And there's all these groups who are then going to take their lamb and go to a, sort of campsite that they've got, and they've got the fire set up, and they're going to roast the lamb, etc. So it could happen that maybe, there's like a small group with a small lamb. Let's say there's 4 of them. And they're planning to do it together. And then when they get to Jerusalem, they find that like all their buddies, from college are there too. And they've got this really big lamb and a really big party and a really big setup. And they said, oh, let's join their group. Okay, so then they have to withdraw from their own lamb because you can't be registered to 2 lambs or to 2 groups. So they withdraw from their own lamb. And now they join this other group, and as long as they do that before either of those 2 lambs is slaughtered, no problem. Now they can join that big group, and now there's this lamb with no group, right? It's like a surplus lamb. We're actually going to talk about that a little later. And what happens to that lamb? Well, maybe there's some poor people that, they were going to be like 50 of them on one little lamb, and everybody's going to get such a tiny piece. So then these guys say, hey, you guys, we have an extra lamb. Maybe there's some people who can use the extra lamb. And the group of 50 says, oh, fantastic. We'll take 20 people from our 50. They can go on this lamb. Now the 30 that remain, they're going to get a little more. The 20 that go over to here, they're going to get a little more. So those 20 are going to withdraw from their group, and they're going to join this new surplus lamb that now becomes that group's lamb. So that kind of, moving and negotiating and leaving one group and joining another, all of that was perfectly okay as long as it was done officially with consent and before the lambs were slaughtered. Rabbi Shimon says before the blood of the lamb was sprinkled. He stretches the deadline a little bit, but basically before the procedure of slaughtering is done in the temple courtyard. And it was also taught in a baraisa. People can be registered and withdraw themselves from being registered for a Paschal lamb until it is slaughtered. Rabbi Shimon says they can be registered until it is slaughtered and withdraw themselves from being registered until the priest sprinkles the blood. So this extension of the deadline of sprinkling the blood is only for withdrawal, right? They can withdraw until the blood is sprinkled, but you can only join a group before the lamb itself is slaughtered. That was a very short Mishnah and discussion of number 4. And now we commence Mishnah number 5 here in chapter 8. That's at the top of the B side of page 89. Mishnah 5. if one registers for a Paschal lamb, if one who is registered for a Paschal lamb unilaterally registers another person with him in his portion of the Paschal lamb, the other members of his group are permitted to give him, i.e., the one who included the additional person, only his portion, which was originally allotted to him, and he, the additional person, eats from his portion, the one who invited, i.e., the portion of the one who added him. And they, the other members of the group, eat from theirs, and this is because they did not agree to the inclusion of the additional person, right? So what's happening here? So there's a group of people. They've all registered in advance. They've agreed to be a group and to share a lamb. So one of them, the agent, sort of goes off to slaughter the lamb in the temple. The other ones are kind of just waiting. They're getting their campsite ready, getting the fire ready, getting the other foods ready, etc. And one of them, is kind of like just hanging around, and he sees a friend of his walking by, and he says, "Joe, I haven't seen you in years. How you doing?" And Joe says, "Oh, not so good. I was going to be part of a group, and I lost my group, or they never made it to Jerusalem. Now I don't know what I'm going to do." So he says, "Joe, no problem. Join my group. You're in." He says, "Didn't your guy already go to slaughter?" He says, "Yeah, but he couldn't have got there yet. I'm saying officially, you're in." Boom. So now, without checking with the other members of his group, he's added Joe, an additional guest, to the group. He didn't check with his table mates, right? With his group mates in this lamb. Because he didn't check with them, the new guest, is his guest, not their guest, right? It's almost like a mafia thing, right? What is it? He's my friend versus our friend. What was that terminology? I can't remember, like from Goodfellas. But anyway, so he can invite one. So he unilaterally invited this new guy. He didn't check with everyone else in the group. So that means he can only do that, first of all, if the portions that are going to be distributed to everyone in that group have to be at least 2 olive bulks, right? Why? Because he can only give meat from his own portion. Since he didn't check with everyone else in the group first, maybe they'll be perfectly generous, but since he didn't check with them, he only has a right to give this new guy from his own portion, not a share from everybody else's. That's what this Mishna is teaching, and this is going to present some interesting problems. A dilemma was raised before the sages. This is the Gemara now. If there is among the members of a group one of them who has fine hands. Now, what a phrase this is. A person with fine hands. Sounds to us like, wow, I'd like to be a person with fine hands. But in Aramaic and in the culture of the Talmud, 15 to 1800 years ago, a person with fine hands was a glutton. It means somebody who takes more from the communal food than he's entitled to, more than his share, right? Somebody who's a food hog. That's what somebody with fine hands is. Okay, so this is a euphemism for one who, even here the language is very refined. A euphemism for one who always hastens to take a large quantity of food, right? A food hog. So what is the law concerning whether they can say to him, so take your portion to eat and leave, and don't take any more from the other members' portions? Do we say that he can say to them, well, you accepted me in the group without preconditions, and you therefore have no right to limit how much I take now? Or perhaps they can say to him, when we accepted you, it was only for the preparation of the offering. In other words, to ensure that there were enough people registered to guarantee that the entire offering would be eaten with none left over. We don't want to have leftovers, right? Remember that once it becomes the next morning, daylight after Passover night, the meat of the Paschal lamb becomes prohibited and then you have to burn it. but it's actually a mitzvah not to leave any over. What you leave over becomes prohibited to eat, and then you have to burn it, but it's better not to have any left over. That's why they didn't try to fill up on the Paschal lamb. They would try to get enough people so that each would just eat a small piece of the Paschal lamb, and in terms of filling their bellies, that would come from the Chagiga, the festival peace offering. Or the peace offering that's slaughtered alongside the Paschal lamb. So the question now is, it's a real question of etiquette, of good manners, right? So you find that you have this person who doesn't have good manners. He takes more than he's entitled to. He's a food hog. All right, so we had to include him in the group. He's one of us. He's a member of the family. We want to make sure that there's enough people here, none is left over. But now that it's known that he really eats more than his share, can we say to him, is it appropriate, halachically speaking, to say to this person, all right, look, you take your share and eat that. We don't want to be sitting at the same table with you and you keep grabbing more than everybody else. And you're going to eat more than your share. So you just take your share now and you eat that. Maybe even you move away a little bit from us because we don't want you hogging all the food. Or is that something we don't say? Because he could say, hey, you didn't say when you asked me to join the group that I was going to have to eat by myself and be isolated and just have my portion and not eat as much as I normally do. You didn't say that then. You can't say that to me now. Or maybe it's okay because, it's very unpleasant for everyone else if there's a food hog in their midst. Tashema, come and hear a resolution to the dilemma from what we learned in this Mishnah. If one who registered for a Paschal lamb registers other people with him in his own portion, the other members of the group are permitted to give him only his portion. Since he didn't check with them, halachically speaking, even though it turns out that even though they might feel generous, the fact is, the way this whole thing played out, they just give the guy, everybody gets their equal share, and then the one who invited a new guest unilaterally has to share from his own portion, and that's actually the way that it needs to be handled. And then he and the additional people that he invited eat from his portion. And they, the other members of the group, eat from theirs. Now, what is the reason for this? Is it not because it is comparable to a case where one of them has fine hands, one of them is a food hog? Because in the case of one who adds a person, he and the additional person together eat more than one portion. The one who unilaterally added additional guests to the group, it's like he is like one with fine hands because he himself is going to eat more, right? Because he has another person with him. He's going to eat more than what would have been his share. And they can say to him, no, you just get your share. You decided to invite extra people. You give them out of your share. And if it could enter your mind to say that one with fine hands can say to them, well, you accepted me without preconditions, well, then this person who registered an additional person to join him, he should be considered as though he had fine hands, and he should be able to take a double portion and say, hey, you accepted me without double portions. You should have realized that. It's possible that I might invite extra people, and now I'm doing it. So what? What's your problem? And so therefore, the Mishnah rules that the group can limit the quantity of food he takes. It is apparent that the claim of one with fine hands is not accepted. Right? He can't say, yeah, I just eat a lot, sorry. You should have thought of that before you invited me. We don't accept that claim. But the Gemara rejects this proof. They say, no, a comparison should not be drawn between these two cases. Including additional people of individual minds is different than the case of a person with fine hands, the glutton. Even if both of them together, like so now the member of the group who invited an additional guest without checking with the other members of the group, when he invites a new person, so now there's two of them, two humans with independent minds, and that's different than one glutton. Right? People of individual minds is different. Even if both of them together would eat a quantity equivalent to a single member of the group, the other members of the group can nonetheless say to him, it is not pleasant for us to have a strange person among us. Therefore, no proof can be offered from the Mishnah. So it's not just that by inviting another person, he's now, he himself unilaterally, without checking with the other members of the group, he's introduced another mouth to feed. he's also brought someone to a dinner party without checking with the other members of the party, right? Good lesson. Generally speaking, you don't show up as an invited dinner guest and just bring additional people with you without first checking with the host, right? Good manners. There are situations that are, extenuating circumstances. But as a general matter, you don't bring extra people to a dinner party without checking with the host. Tashema, come in here a resolution to the question, right? So the question of can we tell this one, no, is it comparable to the person with fine hands? No, because the person with fine hands is still only one person. But this guy who's bringing an additional guest, it's like he's brought another person into the mix. So now we're going to look at a different analogy. Come here a resolution to the question from another Mishnah. In the case of an attendant who ate an olive bulk of meat of the Paschal lamb next to the oven in which it is being roasted, if he were judicious, he should begin eating there to fill his stomach with it. Now, so this is the person he's a member of a group, but he's going to act as the attendant. He's going to do the cooking, maybe he's going to do the waitering, etc. Right? He was able to join the group by offering to be, of service, to do the labor, as it were. So now if he's going to do the roasting, let's say that the oven is off to the side and the group is eating over here. If he starts eating over there by the oven, right, because he took a taste of it just to see if the meat was done, so now he started eating the Paschal lamb. Once you start eating the Paschal lamb, you've established your location for eating the Paschal lamb. And as we already saw a few days ago, or was it a few weeks ago? I think it was a few days ago. Once you establish your location for eating the Paschal lamb, you have to begin and end your eating of the Paschal lamb in that location. So he shouldn't have taken a taste. But now that he did take a taste, that's his spot for eating. So if he is entitled to more than just that little morsel that he already ate as a share, an equal share with the group that is registered to that lamb, he should eat his whole share while he's still there, because otherwise he won't be able to eat anymore once the lamb goes to the table. And now that the lamb is moved, he's done. Like he only got that little taste and he won't be able to get any more. So he should, now that he's taken a taste, make sure that he eats his whole portion while he's standing over there by the oven. And if the members of the group wanted to do him a favor so that he may continue eating, they can come and sit at his side and eat there. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara makes the following inference. If they wanted to do him a favor, yes. But if they did not want to do him a favor, then no. But why should this be left to their discretion? Let him say to them, you accepted me unconditionally into the group, and therefore you have no right to prevent me from continuing to eat. The latter claim is not accepted, as is apparent by the Mishnah's ruling that it is left to the group's discretion. Now the Gemara says, no, wait a minute, that's different. It's different. In the case of an attendant, for they can say to him, when we accepted you to be our attendant, it was with the understanding that you would exert yourself before us and provide our needs by serving as our waiter. But for us to exert ourselves by moving to the place that is convenient for you, we did not accept you. Therefore, no proof can be derived from the Mishnah. Come in here, another solution, and this is an explicit resolution to this question from the Tosefta. Tosefta contemporaneous with the Mishnah, but adding a little bit of commentary on it. Members of a group in which one of the group had fine hands are permitted to say to him, take your allotted portion to eat and leave. Don't take any more from the other members' portions. And not only is this true of a group sharing a Paschal lamb, but even 5 people who made a shared meal of friends throughout the year are permitted to say to one who has fine hands, take your portion and leave. The Gemara concludes, indeed, learn from this that this is the ruling. So, my friends, we never want to come to be known as one with fine hands. We don't want to come to be known as one who eats more than his fair share. I mean, obviously, if there's plenty of food there, and not everybody is going to necessarily have seconds, but there's going to be plenty of food for everybody. Of course, you can have seconds, you can have thirds, as long as it doesn't impact other people's eating. But if it's a kind of situation, right, where there's let's say there's 4 people eating one pizza, that has 8 slices, so clearly everybody gets 2 slices. If one of them is the sort of person who would eat 3 slices in that situation without checking to see is there anybody who's only going to eat 1 slice, that would be a person with fine hands. And if one came to be known as such a person, the other members of the group could say to him, you know what, take your 2 pieces and that's all you're going to get. And we want to see you take your 2 and, we don't trust you. You can't be trusted to limit yourself, right? And they would be in their rights to do that. So we really don't want to come to be known as one who takes more than his portion. There are those who say that this question concerning what a group may say to a member who has fine hand is not actually our dilemma. Rather, this is our dilemma. Are members of a group permitted to divide up into smaller groups, or are they not allowed to divide up if there is no special reason to do so? So now, since we've introduced this idea that for a group that's eating the Paschal lamb and there's one who has fine hands and takes too much, and the other members can say to this one, you know what, you take your food and you go over there. We don't want you here because you're going to take more than your share. So since that guy's now separated from the group and he's eating Paschal lamb, and I guess it's close enough to the same place, but still now he's like his own group. So now you've had a group that's split into 2 groups. One of the groups only has 1 person, but is it permitted to split a group of people who are eating a Paschal lamb into 2 groups? Come in here, Tashema, a resolution. Members of a group in which one of them had fine hands are permitted to say to him, take your portion and leave, which is equivalent to instructing him to form his own group, even if with only 1 person. This indicates that only if his hands are fine, yes, they may divide into separate groups. But if his hands are not fine, no, they may not. The Gemara concludes, indeed, learn from this, that they are not allowed to divide into separate groups for no reason. It's permitted if you have a compelling reason, like one of you is a glutton, but otherwise, no, you don't split up the groups. Now we get to a very colorful incident that took place between Rav Papa and Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua. So I'm gonna introduce the setup of this incident, and then I'm going to give you a little background on Rav Papa, and then I'm going to come back for the conclusion of the incident. And then we'll be almost done. So if you have comments or questions, get them in there now. Okay, so incidental to this discussion, the Gemara recounts a related incident. Rav Papa and Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, mixed their bread together in order to share it between them. By the time Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, ate 1 slice, Rav Papa ate 4 slices. Rav Huna said to him, let us stop sharing. Instead, divide the meal with me so that I can eat my portion. Rav Papa said to him, you accepted my companionship, and it is improper now to retract. So you might think, wow, so this Rav Huna, it's almost like Laurel and Hardy, right? So it's like Rav Huna's a skinny guy. Rav Papa was known to, certainly, he was actually a very wealthy man, as we'll see. And he ate a lot, right? And so Rav Huna says, you know what? We shouldn't mix our food together because then I don't eat enough. So maybe I eat too slow, you eat too fast, whatever. Let's split up the food first. Let's not mix our food because I'm not going to eat enough. And Rav Papa said, come on, we're friends. I mean, we treat each other like friends, right? Now, was this in Rav Papa's mind that they were friends? What is the real situation here? Let's read some background. Rav Papa belonged to the 5th generation of the Amoraim of Babylon. He was a student of both Abaye and Rava in Pumbedisa. Rav Papa established an academy in Nehardea, where he was joined by his close friend, Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua. These two were very close friends, and not only friends, they were colleagues. And Rav Yehoshua was very devoted to Rav Papa and accompanied him there and helped him start the yeshiva and was like the second in command. He was appointed the chief lecturer. Right, Rav Papa was the principal, and so Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, was the second in command, the chief lecturer. After Rava's death, many of his students came to study in Nehardea under Rav Papa, who had more than 200 students attending his lectures. Rav Papa's father was a wealthy merchant and supported him throughout many years of Talmud study. Rav Papa became a wealthy businessman in his own right, a successful brewer of date beer, as well as prospering in other business ventures. The Talmud records that he engaged in trade with both Jews and Gentiles, and he had a reputation for fairness and generosity in his business dealings. Rav Huna became his partner in many such undertakings, and Rav Huna became wealthy as well, thanks to his partnership with Rav Papa. So you can see these guys are kind of goading each other, but these are like guys who kind of rib each other. They're very close friends. And Rav Papa, by the way, well, I'm going to read it now. Rav Papa had great respect for the sages, and upon entering a city, he would immediately call upon the rabbinic head of the community. Once, Rav Papa felt that he had spoken inappropriately about one of the sages, and he took upon himself a personal fast as a penance for this act. He was reluctant to offer final rulings in areas of Jewish law, and he often chose to be stringent in accordance with both opinions in the Talmud rather than rule in accordance with a single viewpoint. Rav Papa was blessed with 10 sons, all of whom were Torah scholars. Traditionally, the names of the 10 sons of Rav Papa and Rav Papa himself are recited as part of the ceremony of the completion of a study of a tractate. Whenever we make a siyum, as we've done here together, and we'll do so again, God willing, when we finish tractate Pesachim, we make a siyum, a completion ceremony, and part of the recitals of the completion are invoking the merit on ourselves and our descendants, the kind of merit, we should have the kind of merit that Rav Papa and his sons had. Right? Why do we always remember Rav Papa every time we finish a tractate of the Talmud? It's because he was able to transmit his values and his love of Torah to all 10 of his sons so strongly that they all became Torah scholars in their own right. And while the source of this tradition is unclear and the identities of the sons are uncertain as well, the Rima suggests that it commemorates the celebrations made by Rav Papa with his sons upon completing a course of study. So that's who Rav Papa and Rav Huna are. Rav Huna raised all these objections mentioned previously, right? According to what we've read here today, when somebody has fine hands and eats more than his share, the one who would, lose part of his share can say to him, hey, you take your food and eat separately. He can say that. We've seen the rulings that say that. So Rav Huna raised these objections to Rav Papa. Rav Papa answered him as we answered that those cases dealt with exceptional circumstances, not just two friends having a meal together. Rav Huna then raised an objection from the Mishna with regard to the members of a group sharing the Paschal lamb. Rav Papa said to him, they are permitted to limit his portion only because they can say to him, when we accepted you, it was for the preparation of the sacrifice. We wanted to make sure we had enough people so none would be left over. But when friends share a meal, it is with the understanding that each one will fully participate regardless of how much he eats. Rav Huna finally raised an objection from the ruling of the Tosefta concerning a shared meal, which said not only in the case of the Paschal lamb, but even when a few friends share a meal during the year, if one of them has fine hands, the other ones can say to him, take your food and eat. And Rav Papa accepted the proof and divided the meal with him. Right? The greatness of the greatest sages is that they will admit when they're wrong. But the story doesn't end there. On another occasion, Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, went and mixed his bread together with Ravina. Ravina is one of the editors of the Talmud. By the time Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, ate one slice, Ravina ate 8 slices. Rav Huna said jokingly, "It is better to eat together with 100 papas rather than with one Ravina," because Ravina eats even more than Rav Papa, right? And Ravina, who edited the Talmud, saw fit to include this story about himself. So they were able to take a joke at their own expense, and we should all learn from that. All right, that's what I've got for us today. Let's check comments and questions. Hold on. Google signed me out. I'm signing in. Sorry, make you wait. Here we go. Questions. Jesse Salinas, we eat the lamb on a semi-full stomach. Yes, we do. Exactly right. Right? We don't want to use our portion of the Paschal lamb for the purpose of satisfying our hunger. We want to eat our portion of the Paschal lamb with the pure kavanah, the pure intention of satisfying or fulfilling our obligation to eat a piece of the Paschal lamb in honor of Passover. In terms of just celebrating and filling our bellies so that we feel good, that's what the festival peace offering is for. And that's why we learned earlier in the tractate, better to eat that first. And then when you're already feeling somewhat full, but not so full that, it would be a problem, then you eat your piece of the Paschal lamb. So exactly right, Jesse. And Lynn says, grateful, a Purim to remember coming up. Thanks for being here, candle glowing. Right, Nina and I were just thinking that, Purim is next week. So we will be doing our annual reading of the Book of Esther. We'll announce that, what time it's going to be. I think that Purim Day is next Friday, actually. So what I might try to do is to do a double class, double daf, either the night before on Thursday night or Motzi Shabbos, and then do at our regular time, noon next Friday, the reading of the Book of Esther. But I think that's what's going to happen, but I have to make sure, and we'll announce that when it happens. But at any rate, the point is that last Purim was like right at the edge before COVID really hit. We'd all heard of it. But we went to a Megillah reading, and I don't remember that people were wearing masks yet, right? Were they? I think it just started like right after that. And here we are, a year later. I mean, who could have ever imagined that between last Purim and this Purim, what this year would have looked like? Unbelievable. But thank God we're all here and we're learning together, and may we all be learning together to 120 years of age. And finally, Marjorie says, I'm glad to see you here, praying for you and for all of Texas. Amen. May we only hear good news from Texas and the whole country and the whole world. People suffering from shortages due to weather. May they get the energy and the warmth and the food that they need. May everyone who has COVID be cured of it. We should only hear good news. And now that we're already in Erev Shabbos, good Shabbos.